Hey there, soccer freaks. This is ATL On Fire, the podcast where we talk all things Atlanta United Football Club. So sit back, buckle up, enjoy.
Be a good opportunity to go over, our ATL on Fire motto about how we know a lot about soccer,
A lot about cooking.
about Atlanta United, a little bit about MLS, but we're going to talk about it all. And in this case, we're going to talk about world football.
No doubt. And yeah, pretty wild. The fact that, my take on it was, right, that you had the two La Liga teams in Real Madrid and Barcelona that are in a ton of financial stress right now, really with nothing to lose at all, both, uh, with the fans or saving face, to try to get some of the other big clubs into this idea of a super league. And break away into a kind of closed model where the revenue sharing wouldn't be with kind of the relegation promotion style that European has known for well over 100 years, and wanted to pull up the ladder on really all of the leagues in Europe that have come and gone. So like a Leeds United, who's been out of the mix for 20 years, that ladder was getting pulled up on them with this idea of the Super League, which is just a smack in the face, really, to the system that has created European football. If you start as a closed system, that's one thing, like a lot of American sports, but this is how it's worked in Europe for a long time. And so it was really surprising to see a lot of the English league teams join into this. And I think what we saw at Old Trafford was the idea of these American owners maybe being a little disconnected, but financially kind of joining the bandwagon with these two La Liga clubs, because they're like, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Like, why should my players play in the national team if they get injured, and I'm paying their salary and X, Y, Z? So I don't know. What were your thoughts?
My first thought is, we've brought back the Mikey Dobbs rant right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right at the top of the podcast. We'll just call it what it is. But so I think you have to group the Italian clubs in there who are part of the leadership.
True.
Juventus, who's also, I think, more financially in dire straits, was part of the leadership. And it actually gives you being an American sports fan my whole life, growing up in New York, I think, you never really think about it in terms of American sports, right? Because nobody ever thinks, the American professional team, the New York Football Giants or whatever, is excluding somebody or whatever. But, it gives you a different perspective. And the American ownership, of the European, soccer teams, which has happened particularly in England, American owners of Liverpool and American owners of Arsenal and American owners of Manchester United. It makes sense to them, right? And this, so the idea here is that, look, they don't want to put their money on the line when you can get relegated, when you can fail to qualify for a super competition. They want to stack the odds in their favor completely. This is completely natural. This is what happens all the time in American sports. I guess maybe baseball, where you have a huge minor league system, might be the best analogy, where, if the minor league teams, in Syracuse, New York, and, in all these little towns in Pennsylvania and whatever, if they thought that they could potentially get into, these things or whatever, the major leagues or competitions, and then suddenly the Yankees and the Mets and the Phillies were like, no, you can't. That might be the right analogy for American sports, but it's weird. It doesn't work as an analogy really in American sports because it doesn't exist. Even in the minor league things, it's not like those minor league teams are competing to become major league teams.
Right.
But it's the height of arrogance, right? To say, like, look, we're going to form a league of the top teams, and because we're the best historically, and maybe some of them the best now, then that's it, and You know, it's interesting. Like they included a club like Arsenal, for example, which is a historically great club, but you know, Arsenal's currently mid-table, right? So clearly not a great
Or
team.
Man City that, only in the last
Right.
decade has
Man
been,
City only been good in the last few years. I mean, people forget, but Man City got relegated twice. They were in the second division just a
yeah.
number of years ago, right? So Man City fans are just happy to be in the Premier League, for a while.
Yeah.
Now of course
And so you got Leeds coming home. If you haven't watched a documentary on Netflix, listeners, fantastic. I don't know which streaming program, but it's called We're Coming Home. The documentary of the Italian owner of Leeds and the coach
yeah.
Bielsa, who's taken them from the championship. Unbelievable documentary, and they're mid-table, right? Their first year back in the Premier League, and if you don't know, what in 1999 through 2003, Leeds was one of the best teams in England and in Europe. Well, actually not in Europe because they kept trying to buy the best players in the world to make it to the UEFA Champions League and
They
actually
got to,
bankrupt themselves in doing
so,
so.
so at their height, they got to a Champions League semifinal
Okay.
with Harry Kewell and Viduka, and
Paducah,
they had a great
Smith.
yeah, Alan Smith was on that team. Boyer was on that team. They had a great team, and they got to the semifinals. And then after that, financially stretching above their means and imploded, and not just lost the Champions League spots, but also got relegated from the Premier League.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
to
I think,
me,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was going to say like Glazer, obviously, when you're buying a club that's now worth $4 billion, should understand how how the business works, right? And what makes the fan, basically your customer, which is the fans, tick. And so, it being a business person, I'm not going to give him a pass in terms of not understanding that culture. But I think he maybe did and was happy to hide behind the couch, as some of the people on ESPN FC were saying, like, and be like, hey, did it work? No, it didn't work. It was nobody was representing what their cause was, even if they deserve more share of revenue with the UEFA league setup. And to make FIFA and UEFA actually look good in this is the ironic part as well. Two organizations which I probably wouldn't say are the most ethical if I was guessing. It's certainly FIFA. Don't know a lot about UEFA, but FIFA certainly is not the most respectable organization in the world. So when they're looking like peaches out of this, I mean, come on, you did not improve your poker hand in trying to negotiate.
Well, okay, so it's interesting, right? Because, if you're Manchester United, you're Manchester City or whatever, you get this offer, and let's say we don't really know who's leading it, but let's say it was the Spanish, maybe the Italian clubs that were leading it, and they're cash strapped because they've been poorly financially managed, live above their means for a long time, and COVID made it much, much worse, the pandemic. So they're just crazy cash strapped. So to them, fabulous idea. The American owners are like, well, why do you, worry about Champions League and the revenue, whatever? We could just form our own, great Super League, and the TV money would be astronomical. So once this happens, I don't know if you can blame Manchester City, Manchester United, whatever, Liverpool, for going along, because you got to say, like, look, so if you say, no, I'm not going to do it, right? Then, and it goes through, God forbid, right? You could just relegate yourself to the wilderness of football for years and years and years. What's amazing is that the German clubs said no. They absolutely said no. Bayern Munich, which of course would have to be one of the teams, I mean, for, historically is way better than, for the entire period of history. They've been great the entire time. So, the amazing thing is that the German clubs said no. And, what's amazing about that is the difference. So the German clubs have a rule where, unlike the Premier League clubs, which became publicly traded, which allowed crazy Americans like the Glazers to take over with an audacious bid. I mean, the Glazers didn't have enough money to buy Manchester United at all. They just got enough of the stock, hostile takeover, and then mortgaged it to the hilt in order to repay the money that they had. I mean, it was classic, American finance, craziness. But the German clubs are not allowed to do that. They can't be completely publicly traded. The club is 51% beholden to the supporters, if you will. And what was amazing is you see the difference. They said no. And I think these big clubs just assumed that their supporters would be like, well, yeah, I want to be in the club, in the league with Real Madrid and Barcelona and all these things. And what was really remarkable is that you might have thought that the smaller clubs of the world would have rebelled, and then some of the fans might have, rebelled against all the bigger clubs. In many ways, the one percenters versus,
they didn't need to
people, but they didn't. What was amazing is they didn't need to. The rebellion happened at Liverpool, Manchester United, Barcelona,
Chelsea. Yeah,
nobody wanted it because they were like, we love this essence of the game, which is if you don't do well one year, you don't qualify for the Champions League. And if you get really, really bad, you get relegated, right? That's what makes football amazing on the world stage. And it was remarkable to see those fans knowing full well what that meant, that they, it means that they don't have a monopoly and whatever. They just chose immediately. It was immediate reaction. They were like, we're not going to do it. And obviously today at Manchester United, it boiled over. They've been really angry at the American ownership for years. And this was just one straw too far. I don't think that the protest was really because of the Super League.
It's about Glazers,
But they just went one too far, and they're like, get your American effing stupid values out of the soul of our national game.
Yeah, and it was interesting the storming of the field, because evidently Old Trafford's pretty well gated and secure, and so I'm curious what'll come out tomorrow in the news in terms of where the leak was there, and the protesters who I think just found their way in through a gate, it sounds like, and so somebody's getting fired.
Yeah, one story was that they ripped open a gate. The other story is that somebody on the inside opened a gate.
More likely.
That is true.